Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, the founder of Full Monty Leadership. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes absolutely everything. Let me ask you, are you committed to up-leveling your leadership? Have you considered what it really means? I mean, there's a lot of talk about overcoming adversity, but what does it really mean? When you take it out of the idea and actually, when you're punched in the face with it, what will happen then? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes on our Facebook page. Simply look for Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever it is you tune into podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get over there, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations now across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Florida to Colorado Springs and everywhere in between, including Quantico. Yeah, they're even listening to us at the FBI. You can also look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. And did you know that you can tune into us through Spotify, Google Home, Alexa, those kinds of places by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, C-suite leader, or a sales leader, entrepreneur, leader in any capacity whatsoever, you know that the ups and downs of business are always going to be there. Right now, as we record this, we're in a peak, but there will be another valley. We came out of the recession of 2008 and went into a boom. That's fantastic. But what happens when that takes place at a personal level? When you are at the top of your world, you're standing on the top of Success Mountain, and then suddenly something comes along and whacks you in the head and takes you down, something that may not even be your fault. Well, let's find out. Let's find out what it really means, because our guest on this episode is the returning champion. He's the only champion we've had back for the fourth time, the returning champion who's hit the canvas so often that most people wouldn't even bother to try and get back up. However, that's not the case with my mate, Peter Sage. Peter Sage is constantly ranked as one of, if not the most engaging, impactful guests on shows like this around the world. He is a natural on camera, audio, and many shows have noticed how much higher the engagement and feedback and retention is to their listeners. His insights, his philosophy, and his experience make him a rare and unique guest, and one who is committed to adding tremendous value. He was named as one of the greatest leaders and entrepreneurs of 2015 by Inspiring Leadership Now, along with, would you believe, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and, Mark Zuckerberg. You might have heard of those guys. He's an advisor to the Hungarian government and is international #1 best-selling author of several books, including a book that I was honored to write the foreword for called The Inside Track. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the Rocky of entrepreneurship, my mate, Peter Sage.
Oh, yeah, I think in all of my history of doing podcasts, I've never had an intro quite like that. And doesn't surprise me when it comes to your passion and your exuberance there, Mr. Baron. So thank you so much. Great
Cheers,
pleasure.
Mate. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm always glad to. I'm always, you and I get to chat, not just on shows, but otherwise, I'm always delighted to have a convo with you, because I always know it's going to go to a place that, that's always a bit of a growth for both of us. It pushes us both, and so to share that with our audience is wonderful. Before we jump into any of that, you and I have known each other for what, 15 years, I think, probably.
Somewhere around there, getting on for.
So. Here's something I'd like to ask you that I like to ask my guests, which is, who is someone who likely, maybe we wouldn't know or wouldn't suspect, who has been a major influence on your life?
Well, there's obviously been many people, and some of the obvious ones, like Tony Robbins, who I had the pleasure of working alongside for 15 years. My earliest and probably greatest mentor, George Zalicki, who is a legend in the multi-level marketing field and psychology field. And then there's your traditional go-tos, which are your parents. Some people have positive influences from parents because the parents showed them who not to be. That wasn't the case for me. I had two amazing parents, both of whom have passed on. But I would say probably one of the biggest impacts on my life in terms of shaping me to who I am have been my pets. And
dogs?
Specifically my dogs. And
boys.
Well, the two I've got now are brother and sister. They're twins, right. Two Jack Russells. And dogs just are such an epitome of unconditional love and living in the moment and being happy, which is essentially what everybody's trying to earn enough money to be able to try to get to in terms of the place. And dogs just show up at that level. Yeah, I mean, cats are the epitome of conditional love. We know that. Nothing against cat lovers listening, but yeah. Dogs are unconditional love. In fact, it's funny, I saw a picture once where you got a dog looking up saying, at its owner saying, "Oh my God, you love me, you pet me, you feed me, you must be God." And you've got a cat looking up at its owner saying, "Well, you pet me, you love me, you feed me, I must be God." And but yeah, I love my dogs because they're always reminding me that no matter how life throws at you, there's always something to smile and wag about.
Yeah. Well, we know that even in the videos that you post, oftentimes the dogs are there. And I know that in our last interview, the dogs were sitting in the background. And talking about last interview, I interviewed you back in August of 2017, and you'd just been released from a 6-month sentence at Pentonville jail, a prison. For people who don't know that, it's in London. It's a pretty tough place. And I do want to add, because this came up even on a post in YouTube, that you spent 6 months in jail without being convicted of a crime. And that interview was actually part of a 2-part series. I just want to give people a little bit of, so they haven't got the context for the background. Let's give them a little bit of context about that. And then let's talk about where life has gone in the last couple of years, because it's definitely taken a few more twists and turns.
Certainly. Well, I mean, the upshot was that I was arguing a business deal in court, classic civil action. And this is important, especially for the kind of caliber of people that listen to your podcast, Don. They're all executives, senior level CEOs, business owners. We live in a world now where litigation and civil actions are nothing but a tool when it comes to business. It's a positioning tool. It's not about who's right or wrong. And I found that out, very harshly. But I bought several $1 million worth of goods from a major multinational. I was under no obligation not to resell it. I resold it, and 7 years later, they sued me for a made-up loss, saying, give us a tiny fraction of it, and we'll go away. And I'm like, that's financial bullying. That's just extortion. I'm not going to do it. And because I didn't play ball, they threw a contempt of court application at me. And I didn't take it serious. And this is a big lesson for business owners. I looked at it, and because I thought I hadn't done anything wrong, I didn't give it much credibility. And I underestimated what actually happens in court, which is not about right or wrong. It's who tells the best story. They sold it to the judge, and I thought, it was intelligently constructed. It was, as you'd expect. They've got a huge amount of legal firepower, unlimited budget. I was on legal aid, and it's David and Goliath without the slingshot. Right. So for me, they sold it to the judge, and I was amazed. He gave me, I ended up doing 6 months, as you said, as the only non-criminal in Britain's toughest jail, and started what became one of my favorite and most incredible adventures to date.
So, we hear these things about white collar crimes and going to the country club, but they sent you to the toughest prison in the UK, right? This was not a country club. And as we talked about in the last interview, you say just now that, it's beginning of a great adventure, but, we're going to get into it a little bit, but this was, of course, transformative for you, and it certainly could have gone another way, but it was also transformative for the prison officers, for the warden. Talk to us a little bit about that before we dive in deeply, because I want people to, again, have context, because here you are, you're serving 6 months, no criminal charges whatsoever. You've been put there through this, as you said, this litigation system, which is really about who tells the best story. And I find that, I got to tell you the truth, find that kind of ironic, because you are a master storyteller. We do know that about Peter Sage, right? You are a master storyteller. And here you are, but with the legal storytelling ability, ended up shuffling up. So tell us a little bit about just that, because that's a really great seed for us to jump in around how you were in there and you ended up changing the system.
Sure. And yeah, if I'd have been able to tell my story, I probably wouldn't have gone there. But yeah, unfortunately, my barrister wasn't as adept at the, let's say, the eloquence of being able to express things as I would have hoped. But for me, we all face adversity, as you know. I greatly believe that one of the greatest days in a person's life is when they realize that life is a growth-centric experience, not a comfort-centric experience.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I had to make a choice when it was going the wrong way, that if I was going to go away, I had to turn it into an empowering opportunity. And you don't do that by playing victim mode. No. You don't do that by focusing on what you've lost. And I lost pretty much everything. I lost, my business had 50 staff. I lost, they even awarded the court costs against me, even though I was on legal aid. I had tens of thousands of debt. They were going to take my home. It was literally 1 minute you wake up, everything's great. Next minute it's a complete bend in the river. So I knew that the victim story and moaning about what coulda, woulda, shoulda was never going to be an option, because that'll just take you down. So I decided to go in as a secret agent of change, because what do? That's what my work has done, like yourself, Dov. For many, many years, decades, we've helped people transform through adversity, through being able to find the best of who they are and express that. And if I can't do that in somewhere like prison, then I don't deserve to walk my talk or teach another word to anybody else. So that's that for me. I just saw this as being on location for 6 months, filming the prison scene of the movie of my life. And what a great opportunity to go and practice what I preach without any distractions, any second takes, cameras, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's what it is. And I was very fortunate that because I went in with that sole focus, I'm a great believer that, another quote from Tony Robbins, power moves to those in direct proportion to their willingness to serve.
Yes, I agree with that.
And a lot of stress comes from people focusing on themselves too much.
Yeah.
We've all experienced that. So focusing on what I could contribute, what could I do, what difference could I make, not how bitchy could I get about the system, how justified I felt in being hard done by, all that kind of crap. It really shifted the game. And I'm a great believer the universe lines up. And so I had opportunity after opportunity that was perfectly suited to my skill set. And I felt very lucky for that. I call it a graduation event in Earth School. Right. And I was being tested on what I know. And I spent 15 years with Tony doing suicide interventions, working with drug addicts, homeless people. Your classic Pentonville population was kind of my day in the office.
Right.
So being able to help those people in a way that most people go into prison clearly not looking at that. The guards aren't trained for that. They're trained to contain, order and prevent violence or step away. The system's not set up for that. It's not even set up for rehabilitation. It's set up for containment, confinement, suppression, forceful control. And so to have somebody go in who is, if I say so myself, a pretty experienced life coach when it comes to being able to address that level of society, I had a full free reign of a full lab full of rats that I could experiment on to go and make a difference with. And it was phenomenal. And yes, I I got a lot of the wing off drugs. I stopped suicides. I reduced the violence between the wings through certain initiatives. I re-engineered the intake system, which is now being rolled out in several prisons in terms of the booklet that I designed that helps a lot of people. Created a bit of a movement. I got letters of commendation, not just from the prisoners, obviously, because they'll write whatever you want if you want them to write. But more importantly, the staff, the senior officers, the teachers, even the governors of both of the prisons I actually ended up in wrote letters of support and commendation on the difference and impacts I made. It was very, very humbling. That was my focus. I went in there with my mission, and that's what I was going to do.
That's amazing. So, again, I want to just say to you, dear listener, viewer, if you are listening to this and you're interested, of course, you can go back into the archives and you can find those 2 episodes where we talk about this in great deal of depth, and it is powerful and insightful. And of course, as we were talking about, this experience catalyzed the writing of the book, which I believe you have right there in front of you. There it is, The Inside Track, which I was honored that you, Peter, asked me to write the foreword for. I was honored to do that. This is a phenomenal book because it takes people inside what was going on and how it impacted you, as you said, your graduation event and what it is that you did. But you went in, you experienced this thing, you made significant difference in there. Now, you come out, I remember seeing you were not this color. You were very pasty white after being in there, because we spoke, I think, like within a few days of you actually coming out. And then, life was gone on, of course. You've started up your business again. You've done all those kinds of things. Tell us about how your life has changed since you came out, because I can't imagine for a moment. I mean, I know that you're incredibly entrepreneurial. You've been entrepreneurial since you were a kid. That's in your blood, and your personal development work and your personal growth work and your coaching and all those are sort of in you. But what I wonder is, how has it flavored or changed your life in the last few years since you came out?
Well, great question. The first focus that I had, when I went in, again, it was unexpected, didn't see it coming. I'd got a lot of people that had bought tickets to my next business school, which obviously got canceled. I got people that were part of my, £50,000, $75,000 a year, mastermind program with promised trips around the world, all of which never happened because I was inside. I mean, there was a lot of obligations that were outstanding. Mm-hmm. And I'm very, very blessed that a lot of people held a space for me in terms of, because it was so out of character, to see the person that has been adding value to them in many different ways suddenly go to jail with accusations that were later unfounded and withdrawn. Mm-hmm. They held a space, but I came out with nothing. I mean, no money, no business, no anything. Right. And the only focus that I had is, how do I honor the obligations that were outstanding to the people? There's about 150 people that were owed something, either a 3-day event, and that's 50 to 100 grand to put on, the trips around the world, which, tens of thousands of dollars, all of that stuff. And I had nothing. And not only that, I came out and there was a huge amount of legal debt, which still was facing.
Sure.
And all I wanted to do was honor the people. And it took me best part of a year and a half to essentially attract people that still believed in me, still loved what I did, had been impacted or touched in some way, that stepped up and volunteered and mucked in. And we honored every single obligation. It took me a year and a half, including all the trips around the world for all of my coaching, high-level coaching clients. And out of 150 people, I ended up giving out 2 refunds.
Wow.
Which I was happy to do, but the rest I managed to deliver on. So that led me up until Christmas just gone, which means I've spent, only from January this year, Dov, sort of taking a breath and saying, what's next?
Right.
We know what's next. I'm so blessed that if anything, the prison experience reinforced my commitment to practicing what it is that I do to help the people that I think I can help. Mm-hmm. And the Inside Track has just been a phenomenal way of being able to do that. I mean, I'm blessed at this point that, touch wood, I don't think there's a 1, 2, 3, or 4-star review on any platform globally, from Amazon, North America, Europe, Australia, South Africa, Goodreads, Google Books, iBooks. It's all 5-star reviews, and they're exceptionally touching. It's changed the life of pretty much everyone that's read it. And what's unique about that, as you mentioned, it's not written after the fact.
No.
This unfolding in real time. It's the actual private letters that I wrote to my coaching clients, essentially teaching them what I was doing inside and breaking down the skills that I was using to be able to walk into prison smiling, have an incredible adventure, change lives, change the system, walk out and build it all back. That was kind of what I was doing. And so that has, again, reinforced, the feedback on that has reinforced the fact that what I'm meant to be doing, certainly at this time in my life. I'm not here to hang up my sword anytime soon. So I'm back with a vengeance. I'm doing my final ever Sage Business School in the historical city of Krakow in September. Very excited for that. The book is going great. I've got a new team, which I'm thrilled to have. I've just done my 5th TED Talk, which got released a couple of days ago, which is going great, and hopefully inspiring a lot of other people. So yeah, I mean, it's almost like you've been given a gift. Why would you not use that in a way to help others?
Well, let's go to that for a minute, because I want to talk about adversity. Obviously, you've taken adversity and turned it into something positive. And most people who have been successful, in my belief at least, have gone through some kind of adversity and managed to turn it around, whether it was falling off a mountain or going to prison or whatever it might be, right? Getting hit by a bus, whatever it might be. But, you and I have talked about this before, but I want to sort of take it a little bit deeper, because if somebody had turned to me while I was in the deep, dark depression after I fell and said to me, "This is going to be fantastic for you. This is going to be marvelous," I probably would have punched him in the head. I wasn't in that space at the time. And there's no doubt in my mind that someone listening, watching us is going, "Yeah, but it's different for me. I'm in this crapola right now. How do I deal with this?" Give them some guidance, if you could, on the most practical thing they do to turn this adversity into an advantage right now, while they're feeling like it's anything but an advantage, that it purely is adversity.
Sure. There's 2 parts to that. The first is context, because context is definitive. But if you don't have an empowering context, a container to hold the experience in, you doesn't matter what technique you use, your brain's never going to have a sustained impact. So context is definitive. I'll address that first. And then there's what tools do I use that'll actually help me out of the funk. So let's look at context for a second, because for me, if you see a parent grab hold of their 3-year-old child and yank them violently across the street, you'd probably have a judgment about that, certainly if you're a parent yourself. But if you see that the parent just risked their own life because they were dragging this child out of the way of a moving bus, you'd have a very different understanding of what just happened. Same action, same facts, but the context is different. So context is critical to understand. And when it comes to adversity, most people don't have an empowering context for it. This is why I said the most empowering day a person can live is the day they realize that life is not a comfort-centric experience. It was never designed to be a comfort-centric experience. You're here to grow and contribute. Why do we know that? Go to nature. It's what everything does or is taken out of the food chain.
Yep.
And we can only contribute more of who we are if we grow.
Yes.
So if you take a physical example, you take the human body and you put it in the gym and you challenge it past its limits. You make it uncomfortable to the point where it's breaking down. It is pre-programmed to return with a better version of itself.
Absolutely.
Part of the rule set. So if you're an athlete, if you understand that you're an athlete and you go to the gym and if you want the Olympics, you're here to win the gold medal at the Olympics. You don't just want to stroll around the gym, pick up some light weights and do a slow jog on a treadmill. That's not going to get anywhere. No, you want a personal trainer that's going to push you past your limits. If you're not throwing up in 20 minutes, you want your money back. So understanding, if you come into the gym and you don't have context for understanding that you're a future Olympian, then you are going to resist the workout. You're going to look for the easy way out. You're going to wonder why this guy keeps pushing you. You're going to hide behind the weight stack so he doesn't find you. You're going to try and do the minimum and look as if you're doing the maximum. So, but if you're an athlete and you're doing that final busting rep, and that arm curl, and your arms are screaming, what's actually going on at the local level of the muscle fiber? It is sending pain signals. It's basically every part of it screaming to the brain, stop what you're doing right now. I'm being broken down. I'm being destroyed. I'm being pushed past my limits. I can't handle it. Stop, stop, stop. Pain, pain, pain.
Yes.
That's where most people are when it comes to whatever adversity they're facing.
Yes.
And it's because they take the context of the identity of the muscle fiber. Whereas if you're the athlete, you're proud that you busted out that last rep and you can't raise your arms for a week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because you know that growth is inherent.
Yep.
So you don't go to the changing room, sit down and think, wow, I just destroyed my arms in the best workout I've done all month. I wonder if they'll grow. No, you just know it's part of the rule set.
Right.
Now, when it comes to psychological, emotional, spiritual workouts, which is what adversity is,
yep,
the same deal, but most people don't have a context for knowing that they're an athlete. So once you understand that life isn't here to make you comfortable, if you believe that, it's because you watch too many infomercials. Right? And if you run to the, pick up the phone now and we take Visa and MasterCard, we'll throw in the extra something else that'll make you even more comfortable, desirable, smell better, look better, and all that other crap to essentially lead you down a path of feliciousness that promotes comfort over growth.
Yep.
Yeah, ask any woman that's given birth if child labor is a comfort-centric experience or a growth-centric experience. Yeah, what's it preparing them for? Yeah, something that's not about them. So, context is the first thing. But if you think that life owes you a living and you're skint, you're going to resent rich people.
Yep, absolutely.
If you think that you have a sense of entitlement and you don't have what you think it's entitled to, you're never going to work hard enough for it to get it.
Right.
So context is definitive.
Absolutely.
So then we come over to, okay, if I understand life's a growth-centric experience, to quote Mother Teresa, I know God won't give me more than I could handle. I just wish sometimes he wouldn't trust me as much. Right.
Yep.
And that's where most people are when it comes to adversities. I don't know if I can get through this. Well, most of the time we make it way more than it actually is. Most people project life and death scenarios into stuff that really isn't life or death. What if I lose my home? Well, then you'll get a smaller home. Yeah, you'll find out how many friends you have and you'll live on their couch for 6 months and you'll have more stories for the grandkids. You're living in a time in human history where do you want to swap that card that you drew out of the deck for your ancestors 400 years ago?
No, thank you.
How about your great-grandparents? No. You prick your hand on a thorn doing gardening 100 years ago, you've got a 50-50 chance of dying from septicemia.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen today. So people can garden with immunity. But that whole scenario was how penicillin was discovered, by the way. So we live in a time in history where there's so much we can do to express ourselves, and we start moaning and labeling adversity, not in terms of physical safety, starvation, war for most people, but, oh my God, what if I lose my home? What if I have to downsize? What if I don't have my job? Well, you're living in a time in human history where it's impossible to starve to death. Yeah, so let's just get a little bit of context around that, because what's really being triggered when you strip the onion back, usually, is the fear that we are not enough and therefore we won't be loved. And most people will do almost anything to avoid that unconscious fear.
Yep, absolutely. Fully agree.
Oh, on the street. Well, there's a lot of people on the street. They're still alive.
Oh,
well, my kids will have to drop out of education. Well, then what you're doing is you're resisting the fear of you not being able to look in the mirror and label yourself a bad parent because you've linked providing a better education for your kids to being a better parent. Well, I'm sorry, that's just a false belief.
Right.
Maybe that's what your kids need right now in order to realize that life isn't a bed of roses, and that'll set them up for getting out into the world and having a thicker skin at the time they most need it. But there's that side. But let's get on to some practical tools. The first tool, and this is what I taught the prisoners, that gets you to a place where you can actually take a breath and get out of this victim mentality that'll keep you there all day, is the tool of acceptance. Now, when I say acceptance, a lot of people confuse that with lying down and just taking it.
No.
To use an inappropriate metaphor. All right. No. Acceptance is not apathy. Acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance isn't kind of a pseudo acceptance of begrudging where you're at because you've got to deal with it and you can't change it. No. Acceptance is coming to the understanding that wherever you are, you are. And whatever has happened to lead up to this, you cannot ever change because it's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
If you've bought, or into a business and it was all looking good, and it turns out that the people that sold it to you have falsified the books and now you've got a lawsuit and all the rest of it. You can't change what's already happened. You have to accept exactly where you are. From that perspective, you can then free up the energy of resistance, which is futile because you're resisting something that's already happened.
Yes.
And channel it into what is the best way to deal with this current situation.
Yeah.
See, what something is, and this is another mind shift here, Dov, whatever something is a perfect expression of what it is. It's not an imperfect expression of what it isn't. I'll demonstrate.
Yeah, so hold on, but before you do demonstrate, say that again because I want somebody to take a moment and write that down, because that's really important. We've talked about context here, and I think people can grasp that that oftentimes we're going into things with a false context, and we need to create a better context. But this is where we get to the meat. So let's get that again.
So if you are complaining at what something is because you think it's an imperfect expression of something else that you would rather it to be, you are creating resistance where resistance shouldn't be. It's a waste of energy. I'll give you, again, make it quite an easy as an example. Question for you. What's better, a small tree or a big tree?
I have no idea. They're both nothing better. They are what they are.
A 10-year-old or a 15-year-old?
There's no such thing as better.
No. Yeah, an acorn or an oak tree. No, one is further along its expression of potential in those two scenarios, acorn, oak tree, or 15-year-old. But you don't look at a baby who's just kept you up all night and look at it as an imperfect adult.
No.
It's a perfect expression of what it is. Now, I've got to be careful with my language on here, I guess, so I'll tame it down a little. But if you're facing your life right now and it's a crapshoot, then it's a perfect expression of a crapshoot. It's not an imperfect expression of a life that you desire and want to live.
Mm-hmm.
An empty bank account is a perfect expression of an empty bank account, not an imperfect expression of a full bank account. So when you understand that my bank account's empty and you're bitching and complaining about that, no, it's a perfect expression of an empty bank account. You free up the energy of resistance to go channel it into actions that can lead you to creating a full bank account.
Yes.
But if you want to tattoo this on your eyelids, it's a good time to do so. Complaining about your current circumstances is the glue that keeps you tied to them.
Say it again.
Complaining about your current circumstances is the glue that keeps you stuck to them.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Get out of resisting where you are, accept where you are. Okay, I've landed in a crapshoot here. Yeah, the former CEO was embezzling and I didn't know, and now I've got shareholders suing me and blah, 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 and I've put all my life savings into this. No, you are where you are. Okay, how do we deal with this? What lawyers do I need to call? What message do I need to put out? How do I need to make allowances for the bank if I can't pay them? And let's just see, what are the scenarios? Now I can choose whatever the best way to put my foot forward is and put my energy into that. And it may not be the best example, but guess what? Yeah, if that's the last rep on the bar for me to lift and it's going to be tough, then I'm coming at this as an athlete, not as somebody who thinks, oh, why am I in the gym?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So acceptance is key as a first step.
That's really great. Because I think that this is something that we can all certainly take a bite out of, and we've all got a reflection to it. And one of the reflections to it that you and I have in common, and we've talked about many times in our own conversations, is that we both dropped out of traditional early education, in the school system, Do you believe that it was us, that we're freaks and weirdos, or is the system, in your opinion, is the system the Prussian educational system that is modern Western schools? Do you believe that that's tragically flawed?
Again, it's a perfect expression of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's just not designed for what we currently would like it to be. So if you go back to where the traditional education system came from, which is pre-industrial revolution, we're taking people out of a feudal system that were lining furrows in fields. And now all of a sudden we've got this new thing called machinery, and we've got to train people in these things called factories. And there are certain mandates that were required for people to adhere so they didn't hurt themselves or other people, which is show up on time, do as you're told, don't question authority, don't get creative because, don't press the big red button, don't pull that lever there because you think it's a good idea, and essentially conform and do not have creativity and obey institutional authority without question. That's what traditional education was created for. Now, you can go back a little bit and say, well, the scholars of old, which was 1 to 2% of the world, were being groomed for a different level. Education at that point, for some of the old schools, were for the elite, the secret societies, the royal families, the politicians, the village elders, the priests, the wise men in the village. All of that was a different track, but general education was not available to the masses. And it was specialized education that was available for the scholars.
Yes.
And when you have a look at where post-industrial revolution education model, which is still largely in place today,
of course,
you show up, you sit in rows, you learn by rote, you get tested by how good your memory is to validate yourself, and you're labeled intelligent or not by
a memory route.
Exactly. It's just completely incongruent with the creativity and the self-sufficiency that is currently required to turn this planet into something that's habitable rather than on course for self-destruction. So traditional education just needs to catch up and morph itself. And just like a horse and cart was a great method of transport 100 years ago, superseded by a car, superseded by a train, by a plane, by a rocket ship, traditional education is just a horse and cart. And I remember a mentor of mine turning around and says, Pete, and I dropped out of school at 16, as you know, and same similar to yourself. He said, while you were at school, I was out learning.
Yeah, that's a great line, isn't it? I love that. Because again, as you said, the educational system was perfect for the industrial age. It is actually known as the Prussian educational system. It started out in Prussia, which is now called Germany, and the American industrialists came over and went, wow, you guys have done a really good job of getting people to do as they're told. And so, how do we learn that? And they took that back to America and trained, and that became the Western form of education. It was education by shoving things in, when the word education comes from the Latin educat, which means to draw out, which, as you said, was the school of scholars, which is a very different form of education. And that is still going on today. There are still many people who have had received a traditional education shoved in. You and I, we went to school, we had to go to school. It was the law. And then we went out and got education that catalyzed educat, that brought things out. And again, I remember being severely dyslexic and feeling like a victim of the situation, and went on to teach myself how to read. And I don't know anybody who's read more books than me, because it just was like, okay, if I'm going to be a victim of this, or I can learn something else. Again, context for something, and therefore removing the resistance. Why do you think that we've moved in the way that we're learning now? I mean, obviously, you were talking about entrepreneurship. We're talking about the moving out of a traditional leadership, traditional learnership. But, why do you think that people are embracing things like podcasts? I mean, we have 800,000 streams a month outside of our TV, just in audio. Why do you think people are going to podcasts or even YouTube and learning? Why do you think that's becoming so popular?
Because a couple of reasons. One is, we were never actually taught how to read in school properly. We were taught to read with our ears and subvocalize and say the words to ourselves, which is slow, boring, and why most people do it as a drug to go to sleep. Yeah, I can't remember what they read 3 paragraphs ago, let alone 3 minutes ago. So, and that was because a lot of the traditional secret societies didn't want people to read. So it was used to validate that from the teachers auditorily that you could actually know what you were doing, but we then picked that up as a habit, which means you can only ever read as fast as you can talk.
Right.
Which even for mouths like you and me is about 250 words a minute. Whereas if you're not reading at 1,000 words a minute, then you don't know how to read. Right. So with 80-90% comprehension and recall. So speed reading is a skill, but most people are not taught that. So most people are still auditorial, and therefore podcasts are a lot easier. It takes less brain work for most people to be fed. That's why they'd rather watch a movie than go and do something else that would require more brain work. So that's one aspect to it. The other thing is people know that podcasts are now coming from the real world.
Yes.
That are learning lessons today and they can podcast about it tomorrow. Whereas by the very definition of something being in school, if it's in a textbook, it's 20 years old.
Yes.
Got to get even new information coming out today, like in quantum physics. Right now, if people were up to speed with the latest learnings in digital and quantum physics, it would be mind-blowing. But you're never going to read about it in school or study it for 10, 15, 20 years because it's got to go through peer review, and then it's got to be in publications, and then it's got to be accepted, and then it's got to go to the board, and then it's got to go approved, and then it's got to be written into a curriculum, and then it's got to be approved, signed off, printed, distributed. For goodness sake, I don't want to wait 20 years for science to validate what I already know.
Yes, exactly.
That's not the game I'm playing here. So there's a lot of people turning to podcasts because it's kind of immediate life, real life stuff. And traditional education, you take, and I'm sorry, but I'm just going to take a whack at places like Berkeley right now for the typical snowflake generation that have been hijacked by the sort of left-wing politics, which is putting that level of cotton wool around people. And what we're actually seeing to be breeding more in North America. I talked at the largest student conference in Europe the other month, and they seem to be a little bit more on the ball, but especially in sort of the, and I'm using Berkeley as an example, but especially in Canada as well, there are so much of a culture of breeding people that are signed up to the model of I'm easily offended.
Mm-hmm.
Which is absolutely the worst prep you could ever put into preparing somebody for real life. What you really want to be putting together is a course that teaches them how to have so much self-esteem, have so much backbone, have so much thick skin that nobody, when they leave school, can say anything to them and they'll be offended. That's the level of preparing somebody for real world. Not say, oh, you must call me a he, she, it thing, whatever it is, right? And if you don't, then I'm choosing to be offended. Well, I'm sorry, but that's just giving you remote control for happiness away to somebody else and living with the consequences. Yeah. So there's a lot of people turning into the real world because it's giving you real examples of how to deal with the bat that's going to come and slap you when it's time to get into the gym and lift the weights that people are saying, oh, don't do that. Let me lift the weight for you. No, that's not how life's going to work. You're going to fall on your face and blame everybody else. So.
But again, this is, I want to make sure that we get it to talk about the future of entrepreneurialism. However, it's clear to me that we have become a very divided planet. And on one extreme are these cotton wool kids, as I like to call them. They're wrapped up and they're offended by everything. And then the other side is people who, can be extremely racist and tribal, and we're right, you're wrong. There's not much willingness. And both, by the way, for me, either side is completely unhealthy and dysfunctional. And at the key of it, for me, in either of those extremes, what I see, and I think that most of them don't see it in each other, is that they're both actually about comfort. Neither of them are about growth, right? So the extreme, more right over here, and we're seeing the authoritarian leader is, we don't like what those people are doing, So we're just going to rule the way we want to rule, and it's authoritarian. And these people on this side are saying, we don't like what those people are doing, so we're going to be offended by everything. And what they're really both saying is, let's all be comfortable and point to them as being wrong for making us uncomfortable, as opposed to, which is actually being in a spiritual place of, as you said, without resistance, in acceptance, but at the same time, acceptance doesn't mean complacent. It doesn't mean I'm willing to take it. It doesn't mean I'm willing to put up with it. It means that we have to be responsible for our own healthy boundaries. And so often that's not the case. We want to make it into a freaking law. And I love, what Jordan Peterson said. If you want me to call you him, her, they, I'm willing to do that. If you want to make it the law, I'm going to fight you, because you don't get to do that. At a personal level of respect, I can do that. But you don't get to administer that, because now you're trying to play with my choices. And I think that that's very important for us to get out of the cotton wool or get out of the absolute authoritarian.
Educate, don't legislate.
Exactly.
And to be able to understand a lot of what's going on there as well is a symptom of the lack of high consciousness leadership in society.
Absolutely.
Also, a lack of a lot of male role models, which Jordan also talks about and articulates very well. But if people can unhook from the emotional fish bait of wanting to be right, which is, basically a lot of it is, how can I take a hit on the narcissistic crack pipe so that I can feel good about my life and justify being right? There's a lot of ego and a lot of significance-based energy around that. Yeah. And you've got the comfort side, because a lot of people don't like handling the uncertainty, but a vast majority of what I see is significance-based in retention of ego and that sort of polarization, rather than a willingness to take a look at, as I say, they're a perfect example of who they are. And why would you ever expect somebody to agree with you if it's not their model of the world?
Absolutely. And it's so important for us to grasp, even in that context, that nothing is absolute. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a few days ago, and he said, well, what do you think about Donald Trump? And I said, the human being or the president? And he goes, is there a difference? And I said, well, there is for me, in that, I don't know the human being. I see a representation of the human being, but I don't know him. But here's the thing, take it out of the absolute. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, has Donald Trump done anything good? And he goes, I don't think so. And I said, then you're not looking close enough.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, there are things he's done that are very good. Maybe they were by accident. Maybe he stumbled into them. Maybe it was just a whim of the moment, but there are some good things he did. Do I generally like the way he leads? No. I personally believe, with my psychological training, that he is a narcissist. However, let me also point out that I can see narcissistic tendencies in everybody who made president, because that's part of what you need to have in order to make it to that level of success. So again, context is not only overall, it's context situationally. And I think we lose that. And again, that's when we go, well, see, I'm absolutely right. No, you're not. Like, people say socialism is bad. Bullshit. Absolutely wrong. It's not bad, but it's not good either. It has great things about it, and it has terrible things about it. And the same as living in a capitalist society. There are amazing things about it, but at its extreme, it's incredibly destructive. So again, the context of each situation, of each person, I think we lose the nuance, don't you, Peter? I mean, I think that we're so busy putting things in big blocks that we forget to say, well, what's going on? I mean, I know your hair's blonde, but it's dyed blonde. So what's underneath that? It looks like wet cotton wool, but that isn't the nature of your hair. I mean, just at a simple level of looking deeper.
Yeah, no, great point. I think one of the most powerful understandings that people can come to in terms of an awareness is the distinction of categories. Because otherwise we fall into this, order of the absolutes. We start labeling, we start judging. And I honestly believe that the only thing that a person should be responsible for, in my opinion, is to be the best example of themselves. And therefore you lead by example and invitation. But if someone's starring in a horror movie of their own choosing, sometimes those people are doing the world an entire service. Let's get controversial. Adolf Hitler. You could say that one of the greatest contributors that Adolf Hitler gave to the world was the ability for the world to turn around and say, we will never stand for that again. Create the United Nations, and a lot of great stuff has come as a result of that through the negative contrast.
Absolutely.
And some people have to fall down, bang their head on the pavement to learn how to tie their shoelaces. So if you put a big block over it and say, that's good, that's bad, it's time to look in the mirror. Take anger, for example. Look at categories. There are certain times where anger is appropriate. There are certain times and categories of anger that are not appropriate. If you are easily offended and I've got a bad temper, which is an excuse for being emotionally immature and not being able to control your reactions to what other people's agendas are that you have no right to control, then that's an inappropriate category of anger when it comes to emotional maturity. But if you're walking down the street and 3 guys stand out and you need anger to be able to step up to protect your girl from being mugged, that's an appropriate use at that point to be able to draw cortisol to be able to defend yourself, for example.
Absolutely.
Or you could actually if I'm working in psychotherapeutic intervention, anger is a fantastic place to get somebody who's in apathy or fear. Because now I've got energy. Anger contains energy. Now you can channel that into something positive by going to be determined that you're not going to stand for whatever it is, boundaries being crossed that shouldn't be crossed. Or you can channel into something negative and go and punch somebody in a bar. But there's categories that you need to understand and appreciate, that not all things are the same.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I've often said to people who tell me that, well, then I'm not very, I don't have access to my anger. I go, well, then you're stuck. And they go, what do you mean? I go, name a massive change in the world that is not the result of anger. Yeah. And I'll say, Gandhi was pissed off at the British.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King was pissed off at the lack of civil rights. Yeah. The major change makers of the world had something to be angry about. And that's part of our nature. That's not a bad thing. That's part of our nature. We need to stop fighting it and actually embrace that, because it has great, wonderful power. But again, in the right application. And that's what we need to understand. Now we're coming towards the end of the show, and I want to make sure that I don't miss this part, because you are a world-renowned entrepreneur. You've done amazing things. I mean, aside from your coaching programs and all that, you've got a business academy that you've led people through. And really, it's based on your own understanding of human development, human psychology, and entrepreneurship, and bringing those things together. What do you see is the future of entrepreneurship? Because there's no doubt that the internet has made entrepreneurship ubiquitous. It's made it commoditized. It's made it available in a way that was never available before. What do you see as the future of entrepreneurship?
I think it's the ability to switch from what it used to be, which is a lower consciousness vehicle for how can you get something, into a more socially conscious, ethnocentric focus on recognizing that I get something by adding something of value for it first. And I think we see this now, again, depending on which way you want to take the conversation, but I'm a great believer in the sort of concept of Indigo Children, which came out more in the sort of expressions in the 70s and 80s. You're certainly one. And the non-conformists, the change agents, the people that resist institutional authority, the people who are more sensitive to energy around others, etc., and willing to take a stand. And I see the Indigos more as the people that showed up to hack through the jungle of conformity, which causes scrapes and bruises and butts heads, etc. And I see that a lot of the children right now that are coming through, and you speak to parents, they seem so much more advanced in their level of consciousness, understanding the questions they ask, certainly compared to sort of our age or previous. And it's almost like the path has been hacked through, and now you see the evidence of the Indigos, which are now adults, where you see a lot of high-level social entrepreneurship, a lot of good stuff, people not standing for corporate greed or corruption or blatant use of misuse of authority. And then you see a lot of the entrepreneurs coming through now, which are getting to a place where they understand that, wow, how can I help people? How can I serve? How can I give the people what they actually want And you see this disrupting industries in banking. You see this disrupting industries in virtually every aspect of society that, for generations has been dominated from a take perspective in the old guard rather than an add value perspective, which is where I see entrepreneurship going now if we have to survive. And the good news is there's no moratorium on it in terms of barrier to entry. You can run a multi-million-dollar company, as I do, from my smartphone sitting at the traffic lights with zero staff and an incredibly committed, loyal, highly trained team that are in several time zones in countries around the world and doing stuff for you from, with people you've never met. Now, I've got an incredible team right now, most of which I've never met. And, its technology has just leveled the floor. I remember in the old days, I used to have to put £1 million in CapEx in order to be able to, sign a 20-year lease and build out an office and get inventory and deal with stuff. And it's unbelievable to see how the barrier to entry has not just been lowered, it's been blown up.
Yeah.
And so entrepreneurship now allows the people that are coming through with the ideas, with the creativity, with the necessity of thinking, hang on a minute, to me, a smartphone's normal. Living with Google was just what we did when we grew up. Whereas you and I know life before mobile phones.
Exactly. I can remember life before the internet, let alone mobile phones.
100%.
And I remember mobile phones being a brick.
Yeah. They were transportables before that.
Exactly. Gordon Gekko with his briefcase with the plug-in phone.
So I'm excited for where entrepreneurship's going, because now it's like TripAdvisor. It's hard to have a bad restaurant these days because you're going to get slaughtered on social media on TripAdvisor, and quite rightly so, because you're not delivering what people are paying for.
Yeah,
it's very similar to business now. Customers have power, and you're always going to get the trolls and the idiots and the people that want to just vent because they're idiots and they're just learning their own journey. But vast majority of people go straight online. You want to read the inside track? Don't take my word for it. I'm biased. Go read the reviews on Amazon.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Now it's a level playing field. And I'm excited for where we're going now because it's kind of quality control built in.
We're coming towards the end of the show. I want to bring it back to where we started, which is the inside track, which is, I know that you're moving forward with this book that has become a bestseller, selling all over the world, doing really well. Tell us where you're taking that in the context of what it is we just talked about, which is conscious entrepreneurship, which is about adding value. Tell us where that's all going now.
Well, the Inside Track is probably the best work I've put into print in terms of giving people a tool set for dealing with adversity, with handling the vicissitudes of life, the ups and downs, with being able to look for dig deep when it matters and be able to turn it around without having to think they're on their own, and have that level of maybe not a cape, but certainly have a bulletproof vest when it comes to standing in the hailstorm. So that's been very useful. Obviously, the letters that I wrote, they were private letters to my high-level coaching groups, and I'm still running my elite mentorship forum, which is the people I wrote those letters to. Every few months we launch a new forum, which is just a joy to watch the people transform through that 6-month program that I guide people through in a whole series of personal transformations. So that I'm busy with that. I'm looking forward to my next book, which I'm going to be writing. I'm going to be starting writing that in October after the Sage Business School, which is going to be my last Sage Business School, and that's going to be called Earth School. And it's really just, again, giving people a real understanding of why we are here. The Inside Track's a toolkit. Pick it up. You'll arm yourself against adversity every day of the week. But Earth School is going to be much deeper than that in terms of really giving that context of walking out in the world with a mission, with a purpose, with an understanding as to why you were born, and handling that journey as it unfolds down the rapids and the river of life.
Fabulous. Let's get into our quick fire round. You ready?
Shoot.
Okay. In a world that you and I were just talking about a few moments ago, which is the cotton wool world of everybody's offended by everything, what's your bravest opinion?
Bravest opinion. That I guess people should just stop blaming, complaining, and deal with the fact that everybody has free will. And if somebody uses their free will to call you an asshole, it's their right to do so. You have every right on how to be able to use your free will to respond, and choices have consequences. Somebody has the right to use their free will to point a gun at my head and pull a trigger, but they have every right to do so. It's free will, but they'll end up with the consequences of spending their life in jail. So recognize that you don't have the right to take somebody else's free will away or judge them for how they use it.
Yeah, love that. What makes Peter Sage cry?
With happiness, with sadness?
No, sadness first.
Sadness.
Not necessarily, but heart-wrenching, you know.
It's when I see people who are blatantly hurting animals, dogs specifically, things that through no fault of their own are mistreated, and I find that can't defend themselves, that don't know better, that are looking for the joy and get slapped down, and that's tough for me to look at. I see how many greyhounds in Ireland. There was just an article written about how many greyhounds are shot in the back of a field for 10 euros because they're not fast enough. Stuff like that. I mean, that pulls my heartstrings.
Sure, I get that one.
But in terms of happiness, gratitude, I aim to cry with gratitude every day in my meditation. That's when I know that I'm feeling it. I'm not just thinking it.
What makes you cry laughing?
Oh dear. Used to be Family Guy, to be fair, but I think they've run out of ideas recently. I love comedy, stand-up, unexpected stuff. Yeah, people being innocent and doing stuff that's funny they don't know, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I love Family Guy's irreverent humor. I love the irreverence of it, but of course now it's politically very incorrect, and I love that.
It makes it marvelous.
Yeah, exactly. I really believe that leadership, and I know that you do too, that leadership is about growth. The business is about growth, that it's all, as you said, it's Earth School. What has been the most difficult inner demon for you to battle? We're all on this journey. What's been, do you think, has been yours, the demon that constantly reemerges, and you must tame it? I don't think you can ever kill it, but you can certainly tame it, manage it, and maybe even redirect it.
All roads lead to Rome a lot of the time in terms of ego. And for me, that indigo nature I mentioned, which is where, if I see if something I feel is just plain wrong, which is always subjective, but if it doesn't apply to higher principles of what I try to apply to, it's like what HP were doing in court with me. It was just freaking wrong. And that sort of like that ego resistance is what landed me in contempt pretty much in the first place. So having to deal with that and rein that in and be mindful and conscious of that the world isn't perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. It's and a lot of the time we need to learn by contrast. So cut yourself some slack. And if somebody wants to be a complete dick, then they have every right to be a dick. I have every right to use that as an example of how not to live my life, or be grateful for them for playing the role in my movie that allows me to learn something different.
So talking about your movie, in a parallel universe, what do you do?
Oh, parallel universe.
I know you're a fan of, I know you're a fan of quantum, as I am, and so in a parallel universe, what are you doing?
Wow. Average superhero kind of stuff. What would I do? I don't know. I'd love to come back as a dog.
Dog?
I'd love to come back as a dog with a decent owner.
I was going to say, come back as a dog where the owner is Peter Sage.
My kids have that'd be awesome.
Best person.
I want to be a dog in Korea, for example.
No, definitely not. And what is a guilty pleasure for you?
Definitely wine. Yeah, I like my wine.
Spanish red, Italian, French.
Some nice Crianzas. You can't go wrong with Amarone. It's one of my favorite reds. Italian. and a decent Shiraz. I'm a full-bodied kind of guy.
This has been great, Peter. I always love having our chats, mate. Please, I always like to finish by saying, this is all great. You're listening in, you're enjoying it. It's wonderful. But we want to take this to practicality. So what is one piece of practical advice, practical direction you'd like to give to our audience that they can take action on in the next 24 hours, preferably?
If I was being honest, without coming off as trying to push as a sales guy, grab a copy of the Inside Track. Yeah, it's got everything in there designed to help people through everything. And I think we're doing a free plus shipping offer right now on the website on there, because I just want to get this message out to as many people and empower them as possible. So, if I was to give one person, the shipping's less than a beer. I mean, give me a break. Yeah, for the level of people we're talking about here, go grab those letters and study them. It's not going to jump off the page and do it yourself, or get the audio, but you've got to apply what you learn. Same with anything. I can provide the weights and the treadmill and the trainer. You still got to get on and lift the bar. Yeah. So best advice I could give some people. Check it out online, see if it resonates. Go get a copy of the Inside Track. I think it's like stupidly cheap on Kindle as well. I mean, just go do it. I don't make any money on that. I give it all away to the prisoner booklet that I designed to help the prisons. But that is the best advice I could give to anybody that wants to take their life to the next level.
Fabulous. And please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can go to tap into all the wonderful resources you have, including the book and all the other programs and things that you offer. Where can people find out more about Peter Sage?
I keep it nice and simple, petersage.com. And everything's on there. You'll be able to find access to the business school we're doing in September, whether it's the EMF or the book, free copy of the book. All of that stuff is the easiest way. I mean, I'm pretty much all over YouTube. I've got a lot of free resources that I give out. I think I just did my 5th TED Talk. It just went out. So there's a lot of stuff on there, on my channel, on everybody else's channel, on your channel, Don, on here. So.
There is indeed. Mate, this again has been a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom with us. And as Peter said, if you want to find out more about him and his book and his programs, get over to petersage.com. Very simple, very easy to find, and it's packed with resources. You can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to our Facebook page. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. To find out how to hire me, Dov Baron, as your speaker or strategist for your organization, simply go to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. Please be aware that the research consistently shows that even the fastest growing companies face the same challenges as you likely do. They're spending money, energy, time, attracting, training, and developing top talent only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you are frustrated with investing in training and developing your talent only to have them leave before you get your ROI, come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the context in which you are holding this thing called adversity. I'm Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.